Please welcome Director, Specialist Solutions Architecture, AWS, Mo Abdullah, and Director, Worldwide Analytics Specialists, AWS, Deirdre Toner.
Good day, good people. Wow, it's just amazing to be here in person in such a great venue with you all. I have to say thank you for joining us in today's session and for those of you who are joining us virtually. My name is Mo Abdullah, and I have the honor of leading the Specialist Solution Architects. Solution architects dedicate their time working with customers. We get to spend a lot of time with fellow builders, which is just an absolute highlight. We tend to think about design considerations, delivery, implementations, and adoption. And one of the things that I've come to recognize recently is that the concept of accelerating cloud adoption and getting it right is increasingly becoming important, not just to builders, but to all stakeholders, business and technical, which is exactly why I'm beyond thrilled to be joined with my amazing friend Deirdre. Together, we will dive deep into some architectural best practices that help us accelerate cloud adoption and, in turn, accelerate business innovation.
Thank you, Mo. It is very exciting to be here. My name is Deirdre Toner. I lead our analytics specialist organization across the world. I spend my days with business leaders who are reinventing their businesses and even their industries. And I'm excited about this session because it really connects to what our conversation center on, which is no matter about adopting the cloud anymore. This is fast becoming about how best to adopt the cloud. Because indeed, it is now the cloud is the first option for running businesses. It's how our customers run their businesses, they build applications, reinventing existing workflows, how we work together, how we collaborate, and even more. And these business leaders know that AWS isn't just about infrastructure. It's about developing new business strategies that they can accelerate in the cloud. One advantage of working with AWS, as you know, is the breadth and depth of our services. But the other advantage of working with AWS is our breadth of experience, and we've captured that here for you to be able to accelerate your business. These leaders really count on their builders to help them accelerate that adoption.
Similarly, builders see the opportunity, and today builders can do anything in the cloud. You know, working backwards from customers' needs, we've delivered a broad and deep platform of cloud services. Today, builders can do anything they imagine. And it's not just new services, it's also enhancements into existing ones. Take S3, for example, launched more than 15 years ago. It was really all about scalability, availability, durability, and it had about 8 microservices. Now, fast forward to today, with so many new use cases, we have over 300 microservices. Just today, we've made announcements around multiple new features on S3. Now, getting your hand around all these new features, the new services, the right combination of services for your own use case can be a little bit daunting.
Yes, we've been hearing this feedback. And this leads to question after question that you all face. You'll hear a few of these demystified and addressed by our customers today. But when you're facing into this, you may feel a little bit of inertia, and you might feel a bit overwhelmed. Do you hear this, Mo?
All the time. There are just so many paths to choose and so many services to choose from. And the truth is, it's not an isolated piece of feedback. Everyone goes through it. And the result is that it could lead into delayed adoption or even postponement of these innovation projects.
Even the most innovative companies go through this, but they've addressed questions like, for example, how do I build this solution right the first time? I want to make sure I don't have to refactor my applications and they'll scale when I need them to. This one, do we have the right talent? Do I need to invest in training to upskill my workers? Maybe certify them? And then beyond those workers, what about organizational change? Is that important? And then beyond that, what if I still have questions that I need answers to? And these two that are so closely related, do I have to build the whole stack up front before I get started? And how do I balance that agility that gives me the innovation that we want with governance? In the world where I live, in the data world, we talk to customers every day who are looking to build new modern data platforms. And we talk about the mindset that governance got them to, which is Everything has to be secured because it defines the metrics that the company runs on and who has access to what data. So it's super important. And the mindset was, in the old world, that's all secured and locked down in the data warehouse, the data lake, et cetera. So it's tempting to take that mindset to the new generation and do that in the cloud. But the guidance is, don't. Don't postpone, do something. Pick the right use case, definitely put the right assurances in place, but let the innovation begin and focus on accelerating adoption. The good news that Mo and I are here to share is you don't have to do this alone. We work backwards from customers' needs, and we see patterns that help accelerate adoption. We have tremendous experience to do this. We capture it, and we harness it for your benefit. We're going to hear some great stories today from our customers that help us showcase this. But first, Mo, why don't you tell us about these architectural best practices we've captured?
Absolutely. Broadly speaking, we think about architectural best practices as a set of proven standards and solutions. We group them into 4. The first is AWS well-architected. That's all about getting the foundation right. When I think of foundation, I'm talking about security, performance, configuration, and such. The next 2 are much more about workload best practices. AWS Solutions combines services, optimizes the integration, and provides you with a ready-to-deploy pattern. AWS Reference Architectures gives you a blueprint if you choose to build your own. And then finally, prototyping. That deals with novel or first-of-a-kind patterns that are yet to be proven. Let's get into AWS well-architected. We think of it as a framework. It contains all the standards necessary for you to design and deliver your workloads in the cloud. We codify those standards, making it available to you through the AWS console so that you can build that early on in your cloud journey and not do it afterwards. We then open up the framework to a global network of partners who can extend it with learnings from their own engagements. They could also help complete reviews and implement the remediations. They are certified in the framework. Our professional services team and our solution architects are certified as well. Lastly, which is really important, we also invest in maintaining the framework such that you can get a benefit of the latest standards, and of course, we're not sort of adding any technical debt. There are 5 pillars in the AWS well-architected framework. The first one is around operational excellence. This is all about designing for failure, monitoring, observability. Next is security. You can think of it as incident management, threat detection and protection, access, and the like. The next one, my absolute favorite, is reliability. And that's all about recovery and change management, as well as capacity management. Performance efficiency, as you can imagine, is all about scale and expansion. But we also provide techniques that allow you to experiment to maintain that customer experience. Last but not least is cost optimization. That's all about financial planning, analyses of your expenses, and the like. The body of knowledge that we have in the AWS well-architected framework has been built over a decade of real-life engagements with customers.
And Mo, every one of these pillars touches on that notion of governance that I spoke about before that's so important to everyone's foundation. Each of the pillars can be used independently, certainly, but when they're combined, they're so much more powerful. In this case, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But what better way to learn about AWS well-architected than to hear it from one of our customers? So please, join me in welcoming to the stage Grant Milstead, who's the Vice President of Digital Technology for United Airlines.
Thank you, Deirdre. At United, we've been on a journey. And we didn't have small aspirations. We want to be the world's best airline. But being the world's best means having the best destinations, having the best customer experience, having the best product, but it also means having the best digital interactions with our customers. And admittedly, we were off to a great start. We have an industry-leading United mobile app. We have industry-only products like Connection Saver that helps our customers 500,000 per year make a connecting flight by dynamically holding flights. We have a product called Every Flight Has a Story, which answers the question you've been asking your entire travel career. What exactly is happening with my flight, and when will it leave, in plain English? But like many big enterprise organizations, we also had some constraints. We had some constraints. If you jump to the next page. Here we go. We were built on decades of technology, a 50-plus-year-old mainframe that manages a big part of our business, 2 data centers that we manage on-prem, as well as working in an airport operations and government environment that we don't control a lot of the technology in it. But like many enterprise organizations, we also had some legacy organizational challenges. Think of the steering committee that was bigger than the biggest conference room we had in the business. Think of the PowerPoint deck that took more time to create the deck to make the project decision than our developers would have taken to code it. And so as we embarked on this journey in 2019, we set off to say, hey, how do we put dedicated resources and funding to changing both of those things? But our plans, like the rest of the world's, changed incredibly dramatically in March of 2020. To put it in perspective, we welcome 500,000 customers every single day to fly on the Friendly Skies. Last year in 2020, there were days where we only had 8,000. We saw 95% of our revenue evaporate in just a matter of days. On United.com, for every 1 customer that was booking, 10 customers were canceling their journey. And as you can imagine, project resources and spending came to a complete halt. So we knew we had to throw out the playbook of old and come up with a new one. But at the same time we knew that, we were also facing into a whole new set of challenges, because all that legacy stuff I talked about existed, but our customers overnight had a completely different expectation of the travel experience. What was previously a high-touch experience needed to be touchless and contactless. What was when customers would travel, maybe they hadn't traveled in a little while, and so they wanted clear communication and transparency on what that journey was all about. And so we had to figure out how to accomplish both of these things. And that's where I would say, never let a good crisis go to waste. And at United, we absolutely haven't. We say that we've made 10 years of progress just in the last year. And I would say that's where the well-architected framework comes in. We took small, mission-based teams and said, eliminate all the waste and focus just on what do our customers need, what do our employees need, and how do we deliver it in hours or days instead of months or years. And to empower these small teams, we said, hey, don't reinvent the wheel with understanding what your solution architecture is from scratch, coming up with what's our operational readiness plan, figuring out what kind of financial modeling should we do around this, use a set of best practices from the well-architected framework to move quickly, move nimbly, and most important in a pandemic, move efficiently. But I have to say, it wasn't just the technical aspects that well-architected helped us with. At United, we like to say we got scrappy. And scrappy means resourceful, it means small teams, it means empowered teams. And it was also a vehicle for us to make that organizational change. Just as a proof point, we eliminated our enterprise architecture team and moved those architects down into the development teams and created solution architecture teams that were able to move fast and respond quickly with this change. And so as a result, we're moving our most critical workloads to AWS and refactoring the way those work. 3 million customers a day trust us with technology like United.com and the mobile app. So let me jump into just a few examples of kind of what this looks like in practice. I talked about that 50-year-old mainframe before. We're modernizing it, and piece by piece, we're moving it to a cloud-native solution. The first place we're starting is seats. Now, seats is an interesting thing. It's very complex. We manage 1.7 million flights at a given time. We have 80 different seat maps just at United alone. It's also high volume. 15 million seat transactions happen per day. And lastly, it matters a whole lot to customers. You care where you sit. And so getting all of that right and doing it in a reliable way was paramount for us. In fact, Deirdre, did I catch you changing your seat backstage a little bit?
If I had my phone with me, I would be so busted because I do this all the time. I love this app.
So Seats is the first place we're modernizing, and we're going to move piece by piece until we get that whole mainframe. But in a completely different part of our business, let's talk about managing the unexpected and the uncontrollable. I like to say that United is one of the biggest e-commerce retailers and one of the most complex operational businesses mashed together into one. And a retailer plans their whole year on how do you size and scale for an event like Black Friday. At United, we have 40 to 50 Black Fridays a year. Whether that's a hurricane coming through the Gulf that's going to hit our hub in Houston, or a winter storm headed for the Northeast, we have to help our customers support what they need, which is the ability to change their plans and scale up, sometimes 100x when a winter storm or hurricane is coming in, but also have the ability to scale down when it's a blue sky day and weather is clear. And we've moved all of the services that support that kind of change, as well as United was the first legacy carrier to eliminate change fees for good. So customers that need to change now have the reassurance that it's fast, it's reliable, and as a proof point, this process is 40% faster on the cloud than it was on-prem. And so with that, I just want to highlight that well-architected framework has been a tool for us, a set of best practices for us to move fast and meet our customers' needs and our employees' needs. We did it with both speed, efficiency, but quality as well to drive that expectation that we have. And so AWS is helping us meet our needs to be the world's best airline. Deirdre, back to you.
Thank you so much, Grant.
Little slide kerfuffle. Sorry about that.
I don't have the microphone.
What happened?
I love what Grant spoke about, especially the no change fees. It was also really interesting to hear how they were to take their enterprise architects and help them now be more productive and work on the solution efforts. And I think a lot of folks are very interested in that 10 years of progress in 1 year. I think that's interesting for everybody.
Now, there is so much goodness in what Grant shared. I can spend like a whole hour just talking through it. But let me perhaps reflect on it through the lens of common questions that we get about the AWS well-architected framework. A common question we get is like, hey, Grant talked about going all in on all pillars. Do I really have to consume them all, or could I just start with one? And the answer is you could just start with one. We've designed the framework such that it is modular. You could start with one pillar and then build from it. The next question, which is really an interesting one, is it easy or hard to get started? And the answer is it's actually easy. Let me show you what I mean. First, I mentioned that the AWS well-architected framework has been built into the AWS console. The way AWS well-architected works is that it essentially asks you for sets of questions and then tests the design of your workload against the standards. It then gives you answers and/or recommendations around some issues that it finds. You always start by defining a workload. In this case, I've actually decided to create a workload, called it Evergreen. And you already heard me say this. Reliability is my favorite pillar, so I chose to actually prioritize that pillar ahead of others. Next, I'm presented with sets of questions. Here, I'm answering things such as monitoring for my workload, network configurations, and the like. Once I've completed answering all of the questions, the framework gives me back a set of recommendations. Here you see that we've identified 3 medium-risk issues and 3 high-risk issues. Now I have an action list that I actually can work from. Now, let me say a couple of things that Grant touched on. When you go all in on the AWS well-architected framework, we saw through the United story that they've been able to accelerate their journey through architecture review. Not only did that free up their talent and their leaders to actually go work on some other scenarios, but it also allowed them to deploy their workloads with confidence. There's an important lesson in what Grant shared. Getting started is actually easy, but it takes leadership and organizational discipline to follow through on implementing those recommendations. Now, another question we get is, all right, so there are these high-risk issues. Where do they exist the most? Is it in one pillar or the other? Having conducted hundreds of thousands of these reviews, we don't really need to guess. We actually have all of the data and facts to share with you where we see those. Over the years, the pattern has changed. What you see here is that the HRIs are essentially almost uniformly spread across all the pillars. Now, that's actually not surprising when you think about the maturation of adoption that has occurred and the styles of workloads that are now coming through the framework itself. The next and final common question that also came up in what Grant shared is, does the framework accommodate for nuances in the workload? Grant mentioned that they had sort of expanded their solution to add things such as analytics and AI ML. And we recognized back in 2017 that we really needed to augment the questions to tackle some of the flavors that are special and related to those workloads. We refer to those as the AWS well-architected lenses.
Yeah, Mo, you can think of those lenses as a spotlight that provides insights into industries and use case best practices. They target domains like machine learning, IoT, serverless, and even financial services. We refresh these lenses every time we have new experiences and new best practices. Since last year, AWS reInvent, we've refreshed all of the existing lenses. I'm happy to say that today we're announcing 7 new lenses. These include hybrid networking, SAP, gaming, and my favorite, data analytics. To give you an idea of what's included in these, we include a perspective in the data analytics lens that helps you understand this new popular data mesh architecture. We discuss functional and operational characteristics of these data mesh deployments. And we explain how platform features can be configured to allow secure access between those critical producers and consumers of your most important data sets.
Now, for me personally, just as an architect, seeing all these refreshes and the new lenses is just amazing. And I really encourage you to check them all out. The management on operations, for example, and governance has some great additions from partner solutions. If you're into SAP, great advice around running SAP on AWS. But there is one particular lens, Deirdre, one particular one that extra spotlight is warranted on, and that's the custom lens. Now, for the first time, customers can actually extend the well-architected framework with their own standards. You can reflect recommendations that match your tools or your methodology. This was one of our most requested features, and I'm beyond thrilled that we actually have it now.
So the AWS well-architected framework is 10 years young. There are thousands of customers. But Mo, when we think about this, who should use it? And can you share what do we charge for it?
Yeah, our customers tell us that given that the well-architected framework covers a lot of the universal fundamentals from security, et cetera, they would like to see all their workloads go through it. And I actually would agree with that. There is a great benefit of checking early on that your workload matches the standards. And the good news, we're full of good news today, is that it absolutely is free of charge for the world to use. The AWS well-architected framework is just one of the best practices that are free to use. But there are others. Maybe it's time to move on to the next one.
Yes, let's move on to the next one. So our next best practice to accelerate adoption is by sharing proven, prescriptive set of solution patterns with our solutions. These are technical reference implementations that are vetted by our AWS partners and by our solution architects.
You can think of an AWS solution as containing a detailed reference architecture, an implementation guide, and sets of instructions for automated and manual deployment. It is actually both things. It's the proven pattern and the prescriptive guidance and the necessary assets that you need to get going. And it is well architected. Now, we started experimenting in 2016, and the idea was really simple. Find a very common use case and create a reference implementation for it. Remove the guesswork, optimize the services, and create it such that it is scalable, secure, and so on and so forth. We started with technology use cases. Then we added ISV solutions and then extended it into industry. Today, we have more than 300 AWS solutions available for you to use. Since the program inception in 2016, we've seen millions of deployments. And perhaps the most remarkable of all things to share is that in the last 12 months, we actually exceeded 400,000 deployments, which to me indicates a growing appetite for solutions.
Yeah, these AWS solutions offer you a proven way to accelerate your adoption. And I like to think of this component like those new popular prepackaged meal kits. They arrive at your house, they have all the ingredients you need, you assemble it, and you cook it. So these are maintained by us. We maintain the code assets, as he said earlier, so it minimizes your technical debt, and they're very customizable for you. And we're introducing some new solutions.
Indeed, we are. We're actually introducing 15 of them. 5 are of the technology type I described. The most recent is the Q&A bot, which was released in October. Now, I don't know about you, but I've certainly had my fair share of question and answer bots on almost every website I've been into. So it's a great example of a very common sort of pattern or solution that's applicable in many, many domains. Not only did we provide sort of the common building blocks for a chatbot, but we've also infused it with the latest machine learning, such that you can build a sophisticated implementation of it.
The next set of solutions are industry-focused, and we introduced 10 of these this year. In just the last week, we introduced a virtual waiting room solution. This was originally developed for medical healthcare clinics, like literally when you're a patient and you're in the waiting room, and you notify it's your turn to go see the doctor. But then we've genericized it, so it can be used for media sites, like you're in queue and you want to buy a ticket for that coveted concert that you'd love to go see, and you know it's your turn to go.
Now, 15 new solutions, always great to talk about the refreshes and the new ones. But as an architect, if you really want to see me get excited, there's nothing that beats a good case of usage or reuse.
Yes, exactly. So our next customer experience that we want to share is Formula One. Do we have any Formula One fans out in the audience? They're such an innovative brand, and it's such an exciting worldwide sport. If you're a fan, which I know you are, fans love the video footage because most of the fans can't attend the Grand Prix in person. So the footage gives you that behind-the-seat experience, and there's sensors in the cars, around the track, even in the pit, that provide insights that pull you deeper into the race. But that race experience isn't just live. There's tons of video, mountains of it, that involves the historical races. So Formula One wanted to tap into that to combine the historical video with the current race to create a new immersive fan experience. So they leveraged a solution called Media to Cloud. It's out of the box, and it helped them accelerate this implementation. This video-based fan experience is a really high priority for Formula One. It helps them connect with the fans both on the track and off the track. The legacy of Formula One is in this video. So the Formula One brand is the video. But I think we need to hear them tell the story with this clip.
Formula One needed to get control of its archive. The sheer rate of expansion meant that we were always playing catch up. So a solution such as Media to Cloud with AWS both enabled us to get ahead of the game in storing our archive, but also looking to the future using AI and machine learning to be able to identify what we have and to then surface that to the fans to help tell the next story of the sport.
F1 continues to accelerate the global fan experience. With the framework developed using Media to Cloud from AWS Solutions, Formula One now has a cloud-based resolution for safeguarding and managing valuable media assets of races from years past and years to come.
Media to Cloud was just the accelerator Formula One needed. It contains all of the elements that you would need for an archive to cloud solution. It starts with a direct connect between the Formula One data centers and AWS. Then it has an ingest workflow built on step function orchestration that then goes through a media conversion using Elemental and then stored in scalable S3 buckets. Now, all of that is then available to AI/ML services such as recognition and ground truth. That really automates the tagging of the media. You can think of the drivers and so on. That metadata and tag is then stored in DynamoDB and made available for querying through Elasticsearch. And last but not least, you can tell where my heart is. It's all about the operational pieces. You have alerting, monitoring, and the like. Now, Formula One was able to use the Media to Cloud solution out of the box with minor additions. They worked with our professional services team to extend the front-end querying such that the user could sort of upload, do the querying, and add imagery and so on as needed.
I think a lot of people can relate to what Trevor said. This was more than an infrastructure problem. They were drowning in the technical demands and in the media demands. In fact, you saw how their media business began to look like a data center business. But Media to Cloud helps them transform their future in a very accelerated fashion. They had these volumes of footage that seemed impossible to get their arms around, but now they're in the driver's seat. Speaking of ways to accelerate adoption, let's look at our new best practice, Mo. OK, so the next way that our best practices help you accelerate adoption is with reference architectures. Unlike the solutions we talked about before that have all the assets that you need to deploy, like that meal kit, sometimes you need a blueprint to help guide your design. Or in my analogy, this is like a recipe. These reference architectures do allow you to bring substitutions depending on the different parts and the components that you're working with. An example of a workload that you might want to use this for is you have a workload and you want to be able to scale it out, or you want to add machine learning. These reference architectures show you the needed interconnections and how you need to configure it. It's all in the name. It's a reference.
A lot of customers are looking to tap into their data and their systems to create that unique customer experience or identify an opportunity. And that's what our next customer story is all about.
So LabCorp wanted to build a machine learning platform on top of troves of data that they had from their lab to help address allergies and get more insights. They had multiple pathways they could get to go there, but they had some business constraints. They had to do it really fast with a small team. Does that sound familiar? And they had to maintain security and compliance. So they started with the M machine learning pipelines reference architecture, and they were able to quickly augment it with their own data and with their science and get the insights they needed. This is a fascinating story. Let's take a look at this video.
Hi, I'm Eva Sullivan. I'm 9 years old, and my favorite activity outside of school is cheerleading and gymnastics. In 2013, I was 18 months old. My parents had took me to my grandma's house. My grandma, she gave me a piece of chocolate with peanut butter inside of it. And within moments, I felt sick. I couldn't breathe.
Seeing an 18-month-old grasping at their throat, her breathing starting to slow, it was really scary as a parent.
It's hard to tell your parents something's wrong when you're 18 months old. Nana lived 30 miles from Pittsburgh with no hospitals nearby, so my parents just threw me into the car and rushed me to the nearest hospital. That day we figured out that I had a severe allergy to peanuts. My dad's a data scientist at LabCorp, and he does research to improve other people's lives.
Hi, my name's Adam Sullivan. I'm the Strategic Director of Artificial Intelligence at LabCorp. Allergy does have a special place in my heart just because of how close it hits to home. It's almost like playing a game where you're trying to find what is the trigger of why I have this reaction where my eyes are swelling shut or whatever else it might be. We are in pursuit of answers, and we're always looking out for that, whether it be our patients, whether it be health systems, our pharmaceutical customers. We're really thinking about the end state going to that level of personalized medicine. How can we get down to where a patient can have an experience using data and machine learning? We can really push the envelope from traditional test ordering to a order of one. We have some steps along the way to understand, whether it be geography, age, or sex, how can all of those factors play a role so that we can get you the most optimal set of these 400 plus allergens, not just providing the test, but helping people understand what tests should they be ordering and what do the results mean. We had some really talented data scientists, but the tooling that they had did not suit the skill set that they had. As we want to be able to answer these questions and have our data scientists be able to build out machine learning models, we've worked with the AWS team to, first of all, build a system that protects our patients' privacy, where our data scientists are able to answer these questions that we talk about with our different researchers and clinicians that we work with. We like to follow the things from AWS kind of out of the box. The reference architectures that we hear from, AWS, we take those and we want our data scientists to be focused on data science and modeling and statistics, all these things that they're really good at. Leveraging AWS takes that guesswork out of it for us, and we're able to just move very efficiently. One of the tools we're using more recently is Feature Store. In particular, we're using it on the allergy project because there's so much information about different, individual zip codes. We're able to tie those into both modeling and our clinical data research to be able to get, hundreds of features. In a matter of, a year, our own internal AI data lake has amassed terabytes of data. It's changed the way we think about how we do clinical data research. In fact, our researchers have had to change the way they think about what they've been doing traditionally for years and years. Having had this experience in 2013, it really changes how you think about the work that you do, just because it has so much impact. It's something you can take home with you. It's something that is going to have a positive impact on our own family's life. One mistake can be life or death for our 9-year-old. So I really think with data, we can get to that point where we can help those people that suffer from allergies. If we can get down and answer those things, people's lives will improve dramatically.
I love hearing about all the research my dad does at LabCorp. I'm so happy that LabCorp is improving my life and other people's life with severe allergies too.
What a great story. Just an inspiring story. And I really want to thank Adam, his daughter Ava, and the LabCorp team for sharing this experience, and to thank them for the great work they're doing on personalizing allergy care. Now, there is a lot of good stuff in what Adam described. First, this was a great use case for the use of machine learning. You have a treasure trove of data through the virtue of all of the tests that he talked about, and using machine learning to accelerate the insights that you need. Now, as Deirdre described, reference architecture gives you that blueprint to build your own solution. The MLOps is what Adam and team started with. And just like Deirdre said, recipes allow you to swap in things that you may need to change. So for me, I may not like dairy. I might take out the dairy milk and put an almond milk. And that's exactly what Adam and team did. First, they extended the topology for multi-user accounts, essentially developers, testers, and so on. The second thing that they did is they swapped in their preferred CI/CD tooling. In this case, it's Jenkins and Urban Code. That's the standard they have. And then they use Terraforms for managing their stack. Reference architectures allow you that flexibility. You have the blueprint, and then you can swap in and out the components that you need. The second thing that Adam and team described, which to me is really important, is how they extended the reference architecture. They added two important components. The first is the use of feature store out of SageMaker. Now, feature engineering is a critical component in preparing your data for your ML algorithms. And essentially, one of the issues we deal with is having a single source of truth. The feature lake, as Adam referred to it, is exactly the solution that they needed. The second thing they did is they extended the solution with QuickSight. This was a way to scale all of the insights, both to stakeholders and users. The MLOps is just one of many reference architectures, certainly a popular one. You can actually go and experience all the others at the AWS Architecture Center. I really encourage you to go and have a look. We've categorized them both as industry and technology ones. This really concludes our third architectural best practice. We had talked about AWS well architected, we talked about AWS solutions, and we had just covered the reference architectures. The next one is perhaps our most unique one.
Yeah, it's unique for a good reason, Mo. Sometimes what you do is novel and it's unique. It's first of a kind, it hasn't been done before. So there's really nothing to capture, right? And so we have customers who experiment all the time and are innovating at the edge, and we're going to continue to see this yet to be seen pattern. So we developed the prototyping for this. Best way to see the power of prototyping, though, is to understand how quickly you can prototype and move to the edge after putting some of the other foundations in place. And this is combining the different best practices. So we're going to have a story now, a very exciting story about how you can leverage the power of the best practices first to get started quickly, and then prototype at the edge, drive innovation, in this case, in an area where it really matters for all of us, which is in sustainable agriculture. So please welcome to the stage Dr. Rania Khalif, the Chief Information and Data Officer for Inari.
Thank you, Deirdre. I'm thrilled to be here to tell you about our journey at Inari building on AWS. It's become clear, especially over the last couple of years, that we are heading towards a climate crisis and a nutrition crisis. At Inari, we are on a mission to build a more sustainable food system, not because it is easy, but because it is critical. Our goals are ambitious, substantially increasing yield while considerably driving down water and nitrogen use. Think about the soybean. A 20% increase in soy yield would free up 30 million acres in the Americas alone. Our goals are nature positive. This means that not only are we thinking about increasing yield to create more food, we also think about the environmental impact, the use of sun, the use of soil, the use of water. Because we can't just solve for more food output to feed more people, we have to design for the environmental impact as well. Until recently, such goals seemed impossible. Plants are very complex, and their most complex functions are not guided by only one gene. In fact, they rely on systems of increasingly dense interconnected gene networks. As our chief science officer reminds me, plants have evolved over millennia not to be great food for people. They did it to be better plants. And plants are fixed in the soil, so they can't run away from predators. Their genetics have evolved to be incredibly complex. There is not enough land or time to try all the possible breeding combinations to get to our goals. Over the last 10 years, the cost of genetic sequencing has gone down 1 million-fold. We've all seen the advances in artificial intelligence. Good luck keeping up with the over 75,000 peer-reviewed publications last year alone. This is all powered in part by massive data, by new advances in machine learning algorithms, and by accelerated hardware that has been able to compute them. These recent leaps in genomics, in machine learning, and in compute power now come together to give us the tools to tackle this problem in meaningful ways. In being able to reach our goals of unlocking the full potential of seeds, we need a deep understanding of pathways and genomic interactions, harnessing genomic and environmental data. Our platform takes two components. First is predictive design that helps our scientists make better decisions of what and where to edit, understanding interactions in gene networks, identifying variations that limit plants' potential, improving protein function. Once the design is created, our advanced multiplex gene editing platform, this is a biological platform, not a software platform, is where we actually make the edits. It allows us to make multiple types of edits in multiple places in the genome at the same time. These edits include knocking something out or dialing up different gene expressions or dialing them down. Once the transformation is made, then the seeds grow, first from the growth chambers, going to the greenhouse and out into the fields, across multiple generations, being tracked every step of the way. So let's look at why this is hard from a systems standpoint. We have different lab machines pumping out different types of data around the globe. We have people in the field taking down plant characteristics. We have geneticists in the lab. We have agronomists in the greenhouse using independent domain-specific tools that were never designed to talk to each other. The machine learning space itself here is all opportunity. Inari was founded by Flagship Pioneering in 2016 across 3 locations, Belgium, Indiana, and Massachusetts. So from the start, we needed to have systems that let our teams work seamlessly around the world, and we had to be cloud native. We worked together with AWS and with other flagship biotechs to do some prototyping which laid the foundations of the AWS biotech blueprint. Relying on AWS and partnering together has allowed for us to take advantage of timely advances in the lower stack and make sure we are sitting on top of best-of-breed data and compute foundations. So with that, let's jump to Alex and my team, who will give us a behind-the-scenes look at Inari.
Hi, my name is Alex Frieden. I'm head of engineering here at Inari. We will, in our development as a single organization, never see the workloads that AWS does. And so it's very powerful for us to lean on solutions architects and other AWS partners that provide training, provide insight, and can see this whole landscape of companies and developments and give us the tools to stay up to date in a way that's very challenging, I think, for any single organization. When we were a much smaller organization, and for other small organizations, especially biotechs, they offer a biotech blueprint, which kind of gets everyone started, because oftentimes we're not starting from a full engineering team or a full data science team. There's often only a handful of people that are working in the lab and on hands-on keyboard. And so that really gets everyone bootstrapped, so you can actually start running analysis, running regressions, visualizing information day one. And for anyone who's doing data science, there's 2 main challenges that you have to deal with. You have to deal with, how do I predict things much better? And how do I get information to the place where I want to predict it in the format that lets me predict it? Being able to use serverless tools like Glue and Athena, so that we're not spending time dealing with why is the server acting this way, that there's a whole team behind Amazon helping to support that, so we can sit on the shoulders of giants and really help to just do the analysis, querying, data aggregation, and data cleanup that we're interested in the first place. So AWS really has been a wonderful partner in this, and that, Inari's partners are something we heavily lean on, and AWS is no exception.
We are building our platform that takes data from sequencers to the field, from environmental data and crop performance data, from public sources and partners. We are advancing our machine learning algorithms and relying on AWS's on-demand accelerated hardware to train and serve our models. In designing our software and machine learning systems, I'm constantly thinking about how do we interleave data and computing with these biological systems. I come from a cloud and AI background, and thinking about what does continuous delivery mean in this pipeline that is a combination of in silico, in compute, and in planta, or in the plants. How can we move faster and with more accuracy in our journey toward better seeds for people and the planet? And importantly, how do we go from a startup that was just needing to make things work to enterprise scale? What's next for us is looking at how to be set up to scale this way. In our field, no one has all the answers yet. The science is moving really fast, so we have to stay nimble and agile. But however, our ability to scale really depends on having well-architected systems and standardization. As Inari continues to grow, we're going to rely on this so that these systems can grow with us, providing strong foundations while allowing us continuous experimentation and prototyping that is intrinsic to our domain.
I just love everything about the story that you shared, Rania, and the great work that Inari and the team at Flagship is doing. I'm a big fan of plants, so I certainly hope they continue to be sustainable as a food source and the like. Now, I want to pick on something that you actually mentioned, which is the idea of starting through a prototype, innovating at the edge, and then turning that into a reference architecture or a solution. And that's exactly the partnership that we had resulted in. The work that we started with Inari was essentially the genesis of building the biotech blueprint or quick start solution. This particular quick start has gone beyond biotech and life sciences, and today is being deployed across sustainability and many other industries. It tackles the very basic premise of how to deploy virtual data centers and create the necessary separations between research and management. And then it takes advantage of the service catalog, which is really critical in terms of deploying these scientific applications and putting them in the hands of the data scientists consistently and the researchers. All of that building on top of a scalable computational platform, and of course, one that is well architected. Rania, I want to just absolutely thank you and wish you and the team at Inari just wonderful success. Thank you. Please give it for Rania.
Well, that concludes our run-through of the 4 architectural best practices. First, we had the AWS well-architected, which is that solid foundation you get started on. Then we had solutions, which are hardened, ready to deploy, and help you accelerate, get zero to production as quickly as possible. Then we had the reference architectures. These are your recipes for different types of workloads and to get better outcomes. And finally, we just covered a great example of prototyping.
I want to point out one more thing, Deirdre, which I think it's important to reflect on something that maybe we did not explicitly call out, but hopefully you felt through the narration of our scenarios. All of these best practices are interconnected. Everything we do is well architected by design. Our AWS solutions build on well architected. Our AWS solutions might have started as a reference architecture. And in fact, our reference architectures might have started as prototypes. Rania just gave us a great example, not to use the cheesy word, of seeds, where what we started as a prototype seeded a blueprint for us as an AWS solution. Embedded in all of these best practices is a wealth of expertise, that of our own solution architects and technical community and of our customers and partners. That expertise getting codified is an accelerant in terms of being able to take advantage of this comprehensive cloud platform of services.
So throughout the day today, the time we've had together, through the lens of your peers, we've heard many answers to some of those questions that we talked about before. And by using these best practices to accelerate adoption, you can achieve amazing business outcomes. You can do things like create a nature-positive food system, improve the lives of allergy sufferers, bring together a global fan base, and not to mention United Airlines dealing with a global pandemic while they're modernizing 53-year-old infrastructure. But the common thread for all of the customers today, and so many more that we couldn't cover, is that they moved past that point of inertia and decided to start doing something. And they didn't try to do it alone. They leveraged the experience that we collect from all of the implementations that we work on to help you succeed.
I really hope that you are inspired by the use of these architectural best practices, by the many customer stories that we heard today. Now, there are a lot of learnings, not just around the actual best practices themselves, but one that stood out for me is the idea of not postponing. There's always a reason to postpone, but there's no need to. In fact, with all of the thousands of engagements and those learnings being codified, we should be able to proceed with confidence. And most important for me is that you don't need to do it alone. We don't need to do it alone. We have thousands of architects, partners, and customers, peers, who are all collaborating and codifying these best practices. At AWS, we are customer obsessed, relentlessly trying to innovate on behalf of our customers' needs. And that manifests itself in new services, enhancements to our services, as well as the efforts that we have doubled down on in creating those architectural best practices. Thank you. Really appreciate you joining us today. And I really hope you'll be able to continue the conversation at our reInvent opening reception, which is sponsored by the architecture team. And for those who want to join us offline, we have a number of resources that will be valuable. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful conference.